This conference will now be recorded.
In today's session, we'll try to understand about variables, complex types. So far, we discussed about different types of variables like string, number, boolean, and we will try to understand some objects like list, set, map. So there is a data type called a list in any programmatic language you take. There is a data type called list. So that list is basically sequence of similar values. List is nothing but sequence or group of similar values. Sequence of similar values are called as a list. So you take any programmatic language, we have a variables like a string, number. So list is nothing but a sequence of values of same type. A sequence of values are similar type and indexed by numbers, right? Indexed by numbers. A Terraform list variable is a sequence of similar values or same values, same type of values, indexed by numbers starting with 0. It accepts any type of value as long as they are of same types. So just to give an example, I want to create some IAM users, multiple IAM users. I can define a variable like this type list of what type? List of strings. So it can be a sequence of multiple values of same type or similar values, same type, like this. You can define a variable type list of strings, and we can it will accept any value as long as they are same type. It is going to accept any type of value as long as they are of same type. See here, I can define list of numbers, I can define list of strings, I can define list of booleans also, like that. So multiple, a list sequence of values of the same type. It's like a sequence of values of the same type. So here I have defined list of type string. So I can define multiple values like this, and they are indexed by numbers starting with 0. If you want to get the value, if you want to get the value which is at first index, you can refer like this, where the variable name users of index 0, so it will return this value. Otherwise you can iterate over this list also in for each, or using for each, right? Using for each, or that for each or for, you can iterate this list. Just to give an example, let's say I want to create a 3 IAM users. Let's say I want to create 3 IAM users like Balaji, Bhaskar. Just to give an example, Rutvik, like this. Like this, I want to create multiple users. Instead of defining resource block for same IAM users 3 times, and instead of hard coding these values also, I can refer as a list of variables, and I can pass values to that list of variables list whenever I need, right? So let me demonstrate. Let me demonstrate this one. Let me open the Visual Studio Code. I'll write a code. Let me open the code. Let me create a new Terraform folder, new Terraform module, I can say. So for understanding this list, so let me close this and let me go to my desktop. Let me go to my desktop and let me create a new folder under the desktop, under Terraform lab, under this Terraform lab, right? I'll create a new folder, variable list demo. So let me open this from the Visual Studio Code. Let me open. I'll write a code, new code here, just for understanding. Let me create files here. Terraform.tf, the Terraform block, and the provider block. I will define here. I'll use AWS provider as is. Let me use AWS provider as is. I'm using this AWS provider and the provider configurations. The provider configurations. I'll say profile, whatever profile. Terraform profile and region. If you don't want to hard code the region, you can refer this also as a variable. And you can define this variable for better understanding, right? As per the better code maintenance, code readability, you can define whatever variables you are using for that module in a separate file that you can name it variable.tf like that. Variables.tf like that, where you are going to define whatever variables you are going to use in that module. I'm saying a variable, I'm saying variable block that whatever I want to refer AWS region, this type, the type of the variable, this is a string type. If required, you can set the default value. If required, you can set the default value. If required, you can set the default value like this. Default value, something like this. And a description like this if required. Now let's say I'll create a one more file where I am going to create a resources. Now here I'll create a resource. AWS IAM user. AWS IAM user. AWS IAM user. I will say users, IAM users, IAM users like that. Now here I'm going to provide those details. Whatever this IAM users, AWS IAM user, whatever arguments is expected, whatever argument is expected by that resource, right? AWS IAM user, AWS IAM user. So here it is going to expect the name, right? Username, name, the username, the name of the user, the IAM user. You can specify IAM user, what is the name of the user, right? Like that. Let's say name. Now I don't want to hard code. I don't want to hard code. I can refer as a variable. But here, instead of creating individual three times, instead of creating users three times, I want to create a group of users. What I can do, I can use I can use variable of list of strings, but it will, the IAM users name should be unique. IAM users name should be unique. But if you have a list, right, list may accept duplicate values also. List may accept duplicate values also. In that case, you can go with set. You can go with set, or you can convert the list into a set. Set, the difference between list and set in any programmatic language, the difference between list and set is a collection of unique values of same type. So you can go with the set, or you can go with the list, but if you are using list, you need to convert that into a set, because for each, suppose you are using for each, right? You want to create a, you want to create a multiple users. There is something called for each. There is something called for each, right? Meta argument. Instead of hard coding here, like Balaji once, Bhaskar once, like this, instead of hard coding something like this three times, instead of creating this, what I can do, I can use a list, or I can use a set. I can use a set. But again, instead of hard coding, right? We last time what we have done, we used for each. If you guys remember, we used for each. We used for each. We used for each meta argument. If you guys remember, last time instead of hard coding three times like this, what we have done, we used it for each. Did you guys remember that meta argument for each, right? So for each we can use, but for each will accept, for each will accept map of any single type or set of strings, right? So here what we have done last time, we have defined something like this. We called one function called a toSet. We called one function called a toSet. We can use like this toSet function, right? Last time we have hard coded something like this, something like this, something like this. Last time we have hard coded, but here since we hard coded, do you have any way to customize these values in the future? I want to create a different set of users. I want my code to be reused. I want my code to be reused. So can we use, can I reuse this code? Suppose if I hard code like this, can I reuse this code? Can I, is this code is reusable if I hard code like this? Are you guys understanding what I'm trying to say here? We can create a multiple users. We can create a multiple users, but if I am hard coding in the code, I am not using anywhere here variable concept. I'm hard coding here. Is this code reusable if I give it to you? I'm hard coding here. Am I referring any variable here? Understood what I'm trying to say? The problem, before I go with the list of users, I'm explaining here. I'm hard coding here, right? Am I defining this as a variable and I'm passing this as a variable? So here we can we can't reuse this one if we are hard coding here. But instead of hard coding like this, what I am trying to say, I can define a variable and I can use this as a variable. I can pass the values to variables at runtime also, right? There are multiple ways, using variable file, using CLI argument, using TF var files, like that I can pass. So what I will do, instead of doing like this, this will work definitely. Let me show that here. The AWS region also I have defined, I need to define, right? This I have defined only AWS region as a argument, and thus that we are using here. But when it comes to resources, I am hard coding. Definitely this code will work. But in future, I want to reuse this code. In future, I want to reuse this code. I want to reuse this code. I can't reuse without modifying. Will I able to create a 4 users, 5 users, 6 users like that in the future if I hard code here? In the future, I may want to create 2 more users. I may want to create a different users with a different name. We can't reuse this code, right? So it will work, but we can't reuse this code. Let me run that code. Let me go to this project. Let me go to the command prompt. Let me go to the command prompt. So let me do the Terraform initialization. So 1 second, there is, so let me correct this. Let me initialize the Terraform plugin. This download the required Terraform plugins. Let me do this. So we have initialized the Terraform plugin. Now let me validate my script. Now Terraform code is proper. Terraform code is proper. So we have initialized. Now it will try to create a 3 IAM users. It will work. But let me show that. Terraform plan. It will create a 3 users. But my requirement tomorrow, I want to create a 6 users or 7 users and with the different usernames. With the different usernames. But I can't reuse this code because we are hard coding. We are hard coding the values in the configurations. So instead of hard coding like this, what I can do, now I am creating using Terraform apply. Instead of hard coding like this, I can define a variable of type list of strings, and I can pass the values to that variables at a later point of time also. Now let me show that it has created a users. It has created a users. Let me go to AWS console. Now if I go to IAM, I can see three users. Whatever usernames I have provided, you can see like this. You can see like this the users. You can see like this the users. Whatever I have provided, you can see the users with whatever names I have created. But in future, I may want to create a different users. I want to reuse this code. Without modifying this code, I can't do that. But if I use variables, it will work. So let me show that I can make my code reusable. So let me destroy this, whatever has been created for understanding. Let me destroy this, whatever has been created. Now, instead of hard coding like this, what I can do, I can define as a variable. As a best practice, we are defining variables in a different file. What type of variable? I'll say type. I can say list of what type? List of what type of variables? I'll say list of strings. List of strings. And description, you can specify IAM, list of IAM users. IAM users to be, or list of IAM users. IAM users list like that. And if required, you can assign a default value. If required, you can assign a default values. Otherwise, you can pass this values at whatever way. Now what I'll do, right here, I can refer as a variable, but this will expect a set or a map. So here I am referring as var.users, and I can define I can assign the values to that variables multiple ways. In the Terraform .tf files I can assign, or I can assign in a separate file, and I can use that -var file option, whatever way, or at runtime also you can pass. Let me pass at runtime, since I have not defined default values also. I can pass at runtime also. Otherwise, let's define in one more file, that is terraform.tf files. This will be automatically read, right? I can assign values to these users. I am saying Balaji like this. I'll say something like this, and I'll say something like this. I'll say something like this. Now, this is the values definition file. Even though you don't pass, it will use this one. Otherwise, at runtime also you can override. You know, right? All the various ways you can assign values to that variable. Now let me show that Terraform plan. It will throw some kind of error, because for each will expect a map or set of strings. For each will expect a map or set of strings. But we are using what type of variable here? This is what type of variable we have declared, list. So for each will not work. But if you have to use, it should be a set. It should be a set of strings. but there is a difference between set and list. List will allow duplicate values. List will allow duplicate values. Suppose if it is a list, right? I can have something like this. Same value multiple times. I can have something like this. List will allow duplicates, but set will not allow duplicates. So if you are defining a list and somewhere you are expecting that as a set, you can convert that. You can convert that list into a set also. You can convert that list into a set also. If you are converting this list into a set, the duplicate values are also removed. Duplicate values also removed. So otherwise you can do something like this. Here wherever you are using for each, right? Here you can convert this list into type by calling one function called a toSet. toSet, it is one function. toSet, it is one function. This toSet is one function in Terraform. toSet is one function in Terraform. So toSet function, this is one function. It's going to convert it is going to convert its argument to a set of values. Suppose you are giving like this, right? And it will convert into a set. Suppose if you give something like this duplicate values, right? In that list, you have a duplicate values, it is going to return something like this unique values. So I'm converting that list into the set. So this for each can use that set of values. Now let me execute Terraform plan. Let me execute Terraform plan. Now I can see like users 3 times. It is taking Balaji, Basoraj, and Shishir. If I say Terraform apply, if I say Terraform apply, 3 users will be created. But if I want to tomorrow, if I want to create multiple users, instead of touching this code, your Terraform configuration, can I play with this value? Suppose tomorrow I want to create some other user. I'm not modifying the code. I'm just modifying my variables. Let's say I'm adding Amit here. Now let me run Terraform plan only. I'll not apply. If you see, is it going to have 4 users like that? Amit also created. I mean, it is going to create without touching your code. And also runtime variables concept, you know, right? Can I pass value also something like this? -var, -var, the variable name. The variable name. The variable name is what is the variable name I have in my code? The variable name is users. Users reusability. So users, and it's a array. It's a list of values. I can say completely new values. Here now I will say, here I'll say something like this. Aravind. Aravind. I am passing only one value, let's say. Otherwise, I am passing one more value. Let's say Mahesh. Now variable precedence, right? I'm just executing Terraform plan only. If you see, without touching my code, one second. One second. What is the variable name? One second. The root module input variables is not a set and has no default value. Use -var. One second. The root module input users is not set. What is the one second? What I'm using here? Users. What is the variable name I am using? One second. One second. It has to be in a single quote. Okay, sorry. It has to be in a single quote, something like this. Within single quote, the list of strings, like list of strings. So here, this is single quote variable name equals to the list of values like this. This is how you need to pass. Now, if you see, without touching my code, I'm using a variables concept. I'm using a variables concept. Now, if you see, am I able to reuse my code? Is my code is reusable, composable using variables? And again, I can use list of strings also. I can use list of strings also. Now, if you see, if I pass like this for Terraform apply also, is it going to create IAM user with this name, two IAM users because I'm passing like this? List of strings, list of strings like this, list of strings like this. Now, if I say Terraform apply, it will be creating using these values. If you don't pass this one, the terraform.tf var file, or you can use hyphen var file option also. Let me apply this. Is my code reusable? Is my code composable? Now, if you see, this is a variable I have defined, and I have assigned that values to that variable like this also I can assign. And here I am referring that variable to make my code more usable and composable. Is everyone clear what do you mean by list, complex type list, variable type list? Any confusion, any doubt here? Now this can be applied for multiple concepts, not only this one, not only this one. Let me tell you, I want to create a VPC multiple subnets. I want to create a VPC multiple subnets. Can I define the subnet CIDRs as a list, and can I use that list to create a multiple subnets using same resource block? Again, just to demonstrate, just to demonstrate the list, just to demonstrate the list with a complex use case, let me do this. Let me do this. I want to create a VPC. Last time we created a VPC. Last time I created a VPC, everything I have hard coded. But can I define as a variable the VPC CIDR, the subnet CIDRs, and also how many subnets to be created, and in which availability zone that VPC to be created? Can I refer everything as a variable also? Now, my requirement again like this. My requirement, I want to create a VPC. I want to create a VPC. I want to create a subnets. I want to create a subnets, right? I want to create a route tables, but I want to make my code reusable. What do you mean by code reusable? I should have a code in such a way that I should be able to reuse. I should be able to create a different VPCs with a different CIDR ranges. If I hard code, last time we have hard coded, am I able to reuse this code? Last time we have created a VPC. Last time we have created a VPC. Let me open that. Let me open that. Last time we created a VPC. If you see, is that code is reusable here? Last time we created something like this. We have hard coded everything. I mean to say, the VPC CIDR we have hard coded, and we have hard coded the subnets also. There is no loops. I mean to say, there is no reusability of the code. I created something like this: subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3, subnet 4, and all these things are like a duplicated. Now I want to make this code reusable. I may need to create a different VPCs with a different CIDRs, different subnets like that. Can I use a variables concept? Can I use a variables concept with whatever type of variables I need? Definitely yes, right? Now let me make, let me rewrite this, or let me open a new folder, and I'll try to use the VPC with variables, the VPC with variables concept, right? Let me create a new folder, or maybe let me reuse the same Terraform folder, whatever we used. Let me reuse the same thing. Now I want to create a VPC with required subnets, required route tables like that. So let me destroy whatever has been created. Let me destroy whatever has been created by executing Terraform destroy. Terraform destroy. Now let me write a code. I want to create a VPC, but I want to reuse as much as possible. Now let me write the code. Now let me write the code. First I will define a variable. Variable VPC CIDR like that. Variable VPC CIDR. Now I'll say type type of this variable, I'll say string, and the default value, if you want to give, you can give. If you want to give default values also, if you don't want to pass, you can give default value also, something like this. I'm giving 10.1.0.0/24. Description, you can specify what is the description. VPC CIDR default, I mean to say VPC CIDR of VPC or VPC CIDR, something like this, some description. Now what I can define, again variable, right? I can say something public subnets CIDR, and I can type as a list of strings, like this. Here, if required, I can set default. If required, I can set default like 10.0.10.1, the default value 10.1.0.0/26, and another 10. One more. If I want to create a two public subnet, 10.1.10.1.0.0, not zeros, from 64, another 26, like this, something like this. Public subnet CIDRs, right? Variable, another variable, private subnet CIDRs, like this. Private subnet, private subnet, private subnets CIDRs, like this. And again type list of strings, the default value, the default value, you can say something like this, right? From 128, another 26, from 190 to another, from 190 to another 65, right? So I have divided something like this, CIDRs. Now I can reuse this, I can use this as a variables in my code. I can reduce lines of code also. Now what I will do, I will define a resource. In the resource, I will say AWS VPC, whatever name you want to give, you can give demo VPC, something like this, the local name, and CIDR. Now here I can say var.vpc CIDR, If required, you can define the tags also, guys. Tags, like this, common tags as a variable. This can be map of strings. Map in the sense key value pair. Map of strings. Map of strings. You can define map of strings. So something like this. The default key value pairs. You can say name, demo, environment, environment. Let's say I can say this name, project name, like a project name, demo project, like that. Key project name, demo project, right? And environment, dev, something like this. These are the default values. And this is map of strings. So I can say description, common, tags, like that. So I can use this also in my resources, right? CIDR block is this. Tags for this resource is like this. Now it is going to create a VPC. The VPC CIDR, whatever value I am assigning. If I am not assigning any value, the default value will be taken. Now I want to create a subnets. So let me write a code. I'll do resource AWS subnets. AWS subnet. I'll say public subnets, public something, demo VPC, public subnets, like that. Now here I can specify under which VPC I can refer something like this, which we already discussed. Under this VPC I want to create the subnet CIDR. Now if required, I can refer like this based on the index also. Where dot that public subnet CIDRs you have defined, right? This public subnet CIDRs, based on the index also you can refer. Like this. But I want to iterate. I don't want to do something like this. I don't want to create something like this. Subnet one, like this, another subnet, another public subnet, like this. I don't want to refer based on the index. You can refer based on the index also. Otherwise, if you don't want to refer based on the index, you can use what concept here? I want to create multiple resources of same type. What concept I can use? Instead of repeating this code by accessing the value based on the index, what concept we can use, guys? Meta arguments. Meta arguments are what I can do. I can use for each. Something like this. For each or something like this. You can use for each, but you can convert that list. You can convert that list into a string, like I mean to say set like that. Otherwise, there is a different way. What I can do, something like this I can do. Let's understand what I'm trying to do. I will use count. I will use a length function. Length of this variable. List. So if I am assigning two subnet CIDRs, what will be the count value? Now this is the default value. Let's say this is the default value. I'm using a length function on this list. So what will be the value? Count. I mean to say how many elements are there in that list. That length function you know, right? So length function will return how many values will be there. How many values here? Two values. So the count becomes how much? 2. But I can access the CIDR block using one more function. There is a function called element. All these are functions, right? I can access something like this element of, I can extract the single value. I can extract the single value using this element function. So what will happen? This count internally becomes 2. This count internally becomes 2 because the default value is the default value is the default value is 2. But if we are passing 3 CIDRs also, the default the value will become 3. And this element will extract a single value from that variable, list variable. So this will be executed 2 times. If I am using default values, this will be executed 2 times. First time the CIDR value will be this. First time the CIDR value will be this. The second time the CIDR value will be this. This element is also one function. Length is also one function. Element is also one function. You can use all these things. Length in Terraform, that is one function, length function. So length determines the length of a given list or map. So I am passing argument for that length function, the list variable I am passing. So based on the number of values defined in that list, it will give the length. Length determines the length of a given list or map or string. If a given list or map is the result, basically the result is the number of elements in that collection. Suppose we are giving like this. Element number of elements is 2 like that. So here internally we are passing a list of strings. It is going to give the number of the elements in that list, the count, and we are extracting the value using element function. We are getting the value using element function. There is one more function here, that is element. That is one function. So element retrieves a single element from the list. We are giving the list and the index. What index value you want to retrieve? What index value we are trying to retrieve? So here, instead of giving the index value also hard coded, we are referring count as count.index like that. So it will create number of subnets based on the list of CIDRs in this variable, and the CIDR value for that subnet is based on the whatever index we are using. So like this I can create a multiple subnets at a time. Like this I can create a multiple subnets at a time. And instead of hard coding again, here, we are referring the variables. Similarly I can create private subnets also like this. Resource, instead of typing multiple times, let me copy paste resource. Let me give private subnets. Let me give private subnets. Like this. The local name. Now here I can refer the private subnets CIDRs. Private subnet CIDR list like this. Now let's say here in my variable, whatever I am passing, let's say here I am just giving only like this. So how many subnets will be? This is the default value. Later also you can pass. Now if this is the public subnets list of this list variable, if this is the value, how many public subnets will be created as per this logic? How many public subnets will be created? If this is the value, only one. If this is the value, how many public subnets will be created? If this is the value, the default value or whatever you are using, 2. So, and also based on my requirement, suppose you want to create a VPC with a different CIDRs, different number of public subnets, private subnet. Can you just modify the value? Can you assign your own values and reuse this code also? Can you assign your own values, your own CIDR and reuse this code, whatever I am writing here? Yes. And also there is a common tags. There is a common tags also. What you can do, You can assign this common tags also like this. Tags, and again there is a functions here, guys. Again there is a function called merge. Again there is a function called merge. You can merge multiple values also. You can merge multiple values also. Merge function. There is a function called merge. It can merge maps. It can merge the maps also. So I can use this merge function. I can use this merge function also if required to add some more elements. Common attributes, common tags. Common tags I am assigning something like this. I can use something called merge function. I can use something called merge function. So common tags I already defined. Dot where dot common tags, and I can have my own tags again here. I can have my own tags. I can pass my own tags also later. I can pass my own tags also later. Something like this, comma my own tags, additional tags like a name here. The value, the value will be the value will be something like this. If you don't want to hard code, you can say demo demo vpc demo vpc public subnet public subnet. You can use this index, right? Count dot index something, guys. There is a function here. There is a function merge. So the tags will be something like this. The tags, common tags, that common tags I have defined as a variable like project name, demo, environment dev, and on top of that tags, this will be added. That is what this merge function is going to do. Now I can use all these variables like this. Suppose here I want to use same tags, common tags, but I can have my own tags on top of it. Private subnet index like that. So this is also one more function, merge function. So you can use this merge function. Merge takes and number of maps or object. It is going to return a single map that contains merged elements of all the arguments. So here, this is what we have defined, the default values. You have defined the default values. We are passing to that function something like this, and also this one, and also this one. So I will get something like this. I'll get something like this. I'll get something like this. This one as well as this one based on the index. Based on the index, right? I'll have my public subnet 1, public subnet 2, like that. So that is what this merge function is doing. That is what this merge function is doing. So I am going to use this merge function also to merge common tags with my own tags also, like this. Now VPC will be created, subnets will be created like that. Let me format this code. Let me format this code. Let me format this code. Now, if required, if required, if required, I can create a route tables, IGW. So I can create a route table, I can create IGW like that. I'll create a route table, I'll create IGW like this. Now let me develop the code. Let me develop the code. Resource, AWS Internet Gateway, AWS Internet Gateway. Whatever we have already done, but I am using a variables concept. Demo VPC IGW. So what we can do, this will be created and it will be mapped. It will be mapped to which VPC you want to map. So I am going to map that VPC to this one, and you can have a tags. You can have a tags. You can use merge function if you want to merge multiple maps, right? Common tags, I'm saying demo VPC IGW, demo VPC IGW, something like this. So common tags as well as this one IGW. Now what else I need to create? VPC subnets. I have two times this subnet to create a public subnets, private subnet. I have created IGW. Then what else I need to create as per the last session? What else? Do I need to create a route table for public subnets? Route table. Route tables, route table association, route tables and route table association, whatever we have done in the last class. I hope you guys remember what we have done in the previous sessions, right? I already created a VPC. I already created a VPC in the previous session, but everything hard coded. There is no reusability. There is no variables concept. There is no loops or functions type of a concept. Everything we have hard coded last time. And again, VPC level, if you want to make enable DNS support, enable VPC level, you want to make some changes. Suppose sometimes you don't want this DNS host name. Instead of defining a true or false here, can I refer this also as a Boolean variable? Can I refer this also as a Boolean variable where enable DNS support, some kind of a variable? Can I have that also as a variable, Boolean variable, where that variable name type type type, just to give an example, Boolean, bool, and default I want to make it true, but sometimes I don't want this enable DNS host name. Sometimes I want to make it false. Can I pass this value? Can I assign the value as false to this variable so that this will be false, like that enable DNS host names becomes false if I pass at runtime? Boolean variable also. Guys, I am taking very advanced use case, very complex use case, advanced use case in Terraform. I am going with variables, I am going with functions. I am trying to write a code more reusable, more composable. So if I have like this, if I share this code with you, will you guys able to create a number of subnets, a number of I mean to say the VPCs and its subnets by reusing these configurations, by passing your own values? Yes. So this is the Boolean, the description you can say. Now the subnets association, IGW have created the route table. Last time everything we have hard coded, right? In the code, everything we have hard coded. Now I'll do the association. I'll create a route table. I'll create a route table. I'll associate. I'll create a route table like this. I'll create a route table like this. I'll create a route table. I'll create a route table like this in that VPC, in this VPC, but here we are not using ID, guys. We need to use ID, AWS VPC, that like this, dot ID that is missing. Let's use this. Now what I can do, I can create a route table, and again you can use to merge, you can use one function, merge. I am merging the common tags, which is defined as a variable, var dot common tags, comma this. So you can format all these things later also for better readability. I am creating a route table. Route table association. Route table association. But last time we have hard coded subnet ID, right? Route table ID like that. So what I can do here, I can use that count all those things now. So AWS route table association, demo VPC, demo VPC, demo VPC, public route. association, something, some unique name. Now here, instead of hard coding, because there are multiple subnets, right? There are multiple subnets now. I am using a kind of a list. So instead of hard coding like this, what I can do, again I can use count. Again I can use count. So this is based on the length. This is based on the length of your public subnets. Var dot public subnets, right? Public subnets, and here this will be repeated multiple times. This will be repeated multiple times. This will be repeated multiple times, like element using element using element. So element function, element function, something like this. Element function. Here you can refer the index of this one, your public subnets. AWS subnet, the local name. Here you can refer count dot index, count dot index. So something like this, count dot index, like this. So for the first time, first subnet ID, for the second time, second subnet ID will be referred here. And a route table, same ID, right? Single route table, you are trying to associate multiple subnets, this is fine. So AWS route table, public route dot ID. So two times this will be executed because of the length of that CIDRs, public subnet CIDRs, and for the first time, first subnet ID, for the second time, second subnet ID will be assigned here. Is everyone clear what I am trying to do here? Is everyone clear what we are doing here? Is everyone clear? The length function two times, for the first time, first subnet ID, for the second time, second subnet ID. Okay. Now similarly, I'll create a NAT instances for private. I don't want to hard code whether one NAT instance, two NAT instances, like that, right? So you can do that, right? If you want to create a single NAT instance, you can create a single NAT instance also. First, let me create with this one. You will find the problem. You will find the problem. Nowhere I have mentioned availability zone. So here we have not specified in which availability zone this has to be created. In which availability zone this has to be created, in which availability zone this private subnets has to be created. If I create this script, right, if I apply this script, VPC will be created, subnets will be created. Let me show that. I'll create a NAT instances later. First, showing the problem, let me do the Terraform validate on this code. Now, one second. Route table, AWS route table. There we have some problem. AWS route table. One second. Here, element, one second. This is something like this, guys. This is something like this. Here, you need to define something like this. So here, you need to define something like this. When you are using a element function on that one, when you are using that element function on that one, you need to refer something like this. This is giving some problem. Let me show that. So you need to define something like this, right? When you are referring, the association, you need to give star like that, dot id, and you are passing count dot index. So element will expect two arguments. Element will expect two arguments here, and this we are giving star. We are passing all the subnets IDs, all the public subnet IDs we are passing, but it is going to return based on the index the respective subnet ID. So the respective subnet ID here we need to pass something like this: star star comma what index value you need to get, something like this you are passing. And again somewhere we have a problem, where we have a problem, internet gateway. Somewhere we have a problem, internet gateway. Where is that internet gateway? Here. What is missing here? What is missing here? One second. So here AWS internet gateway has demo VPC IGW. So here demo VPC IGW, demo VPC IGW, demo VPC IGW, demo VPC IGW. Let me validate. Here comma is not required. Let's leave it. Let's validate. Index, where exactly index number? Here route table association, same problem. Here in the route table association also it will be something like this: star star. You are passing all the things, and you are going to pass one more argument, count dot index, count dot index, subnet ID. Let me validate. Let me validate. Now one more problem where private subnet CIDRs, unsupported attribute, private subnet CIDRs, public subnet EIDRs. One second. One second. Second. Can't access attributes on primitive typed value string. Which one is string here? Private subnet CIDRs. One second, guys. Length function I am using here. Length function I am using. One second, one second. Here, the ID was missing. The ID was missing here. So this here, right? The ID was missing here. So dot ID. It should be like this only, guys. It should be like this only. There was ID was missing. Let me validate. When you are writing a Terraform code, you need to be more useful. CIDR block. Let me, one second, let me double check all these things. Line by line, we will check. Line by line, we'll check. Now in line number 11, there is some problem. Let's understand what is that problem. And line number 23 also there is one problem. Let's understand what is that problem. Here, line number 11, there is one problem. Element function we are using count dot index. That is fine. That is fine, right? Element function we are using, right? And a count dot index. Element function you are using count dot index. Element function we are using count dot index. There is a comma after this id. It should be there. It should be there. It has to be there. It has to be there, guys. It has to be there. Let me validate one more time. Okay. Element, element. Sorry, I have messed up this one. One second. I have messed up this one. Here, I no need. When I am creating a subnets, when I am creating a subnets, I am need to get the value of that one. But here I need that. Here I need that. I should not refer that here IDs, because first we are assigning, we are getting the CIDR of that list, right? So here I have messed up. So let's validate. I got that point. So what I was doing, right? Unnecessarily, I am trying to use the, I am getting the IDs from the variables, right? This is not the variable IDs. So this is the list. I am extracting the element based on the count. So this is fine. Now here we are referencing the names, local names, alias names based on the ID, because subnet is created, and I have for the first time first subnet ID, for the second time second subnet ID I need. So this is fine. So let's do the Terraform plan. Let's do the Terraform plan. Let's write the Terraform plan. Now you can see resources will be created. There will be resources created, something like this. There will be resources created, something like this. You can see I have just executed Terraform plan. Internet gateway is getting created. These tags and route table is getting created like this. VPC ID will be come to known after, VPC ID will be come to known after applying only, and route table association, and subnet. Since I have not specified availability zone, in the default availability zones it will create. Let me say Terraform apply. Now VPC will be created, IGW will be created, public subnets will be created, all these things will be created as per the default values. As per the default values it is creating. But if you observe, it is not creating in the way I was expecting in any of the availability zone. In any of the whatever availability zones I am expecting, it is not creating. It is going to be created randomly. It is going to be created randomly. Now if I go to AWS, if I go to AWS, if I go to this console, if I go to VPC, if I go to VPC, there is a VPC. There is a VPC with this CIDR. There is a VPC with this CIDR 10.1.0.0/24. For this VPC subnets are created. For this VPC subnets are created. 4 subnets are created. Fine. 4 subnets are created. Demo VPC private subnet 0, private subnet 1, public subnet 0, public subnet 1. These are the tags. Now you can see is all are in same availability zone, like 1C, 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 like that. Is all the is all the subnets are in same availability zone, because I have not specified the availability zone. I have not specified the availability zone. So it is getting created in same availability zone. But there are public subnets. There are public subnet. There are 2 public subnets. There is a route table created. There is a route table created for that VPC. These two subnets are associated. with that route table where we have a route to the IGW, but all are created in the same availability zone. Can I specify the availability zone also in the code? Let me destroy this. Can I specify the availability zone also in the code? But without hard coding, can I pass availability zones, list of availability zone names to be used for public subnet, list of availability zones to be used for private subnets? Can I specify that also as a variable and use that in my configurations? Yes. Let me show that. Let me show that. Now I'll define one more variable. I'll define one more variable. I'll define one more variable. AWS availability zone, something like this. AWS availability, some variable, availability zones, AWS availability zones like this. AWS availability zones like this. Here what I can do, I can specify type list of string, list of string, list of strings. I can say default. Suppose I want to use these two, AP South 1A, AP South 1B. I'll do something like this, AP South 1A, AP South 1B, like that. The default value. This I can refer in my code also. Now in wherever I'm creating a subnets, right? Wherever I'm creating a subnets here, wherever I'm creating a subnets here, I can specify availability zone, availability zone. Now I can refer something like this, element var dot availability zones, comma count dot index, count dot index. Guys, understand this one. Understand this one. This is my value, default value, which I am passing. So first subnet will be created in this availability zone, because this function, these values are internally used. So for the first time, first index, this value. Second time, second index, this value. So do I have now, there are two CIDRs, right? Two subnets will be created using this resource block. For the first time, first CIDR, second time, second CIDR, and again first subnet will be created in 1A availability zone, second subnet will be created in 1B availability zone. And I can refer like this here also. I can refer like this here also. Now let me show that Terraform plan. Let me show the Terraform plan. So Terraform plan, let me show that. Now do you see it is like this? Total 4 subnets, 2 public subnets. The CIDR of first public subnet is this. It will be created in 1A availability zone with the default values. Second public subnet, this is the CIDR. It will be created in 1B availability zone. Private subnet also. You can see there is a private subnet. One private subnet in 1B with this CIDR. Another private subnet will be in another CIDR like that with another CIDR. Now let me show that. Let me create a Terraform apply. Let me apply this now again. Terraform apply hyphen auto approve. Terraform apply hyphen auto approve. Now let me show that VPC will be created, subnets will be created. Now VPC will be created with this CIDR. Now this VPC has 4 subnets. This VPC has 4 subnets. This VPC has 4 subnets. It will be creating 4 subnets. It is still under creation. Let's wait. Now if I see that VPC has 4 subnets. That VPC has 4 subnets. And do you see in 1A availability zone 2 subnets, in 1B availability zone 2 subnets. Now in 1A availability zone 2 subnets for that VPC. In 1B availability in zone 2 subnets. and there is one public route table. There is one public route table. In this route table, there is a route to the IGW. Only these two subnets are associated. Only public subnets are associated. So private subnets are not associated. If required, can I create a NAT instances also now? Based on the number of private subnets I have, can I create a NAT instances also? Can I define the routes to the NAT instances also like that? Yes. So something like this. I'll say resource NAT gateway, demo VPC, demo VPC, NAT, demo VPC, NAT gateways, something, NAT gateways, something like this. But this NAT gateway requires what? This NAT gateway requires what? We already discussed. What NAT gateway requires? Elastic IP. Elastic IP. Can I first define that resource? Elastic IP. Elastic IP. What is that? EIP. AWS EIP. EIP. Now NAT EIPs. But suppose I want to get two NAT elastic IPs. Can I say something like this? Count length based on the number of subnets I have. I need those many elastic IPs. Can I say something like this? Length of var dot private subnet CIDRs. So how many elastic IPs will be created? Now how many elastic IPs will be created? Length of this private subnet CIDRs. Now the default value, how many? The private subnet CIDRs, 2. So how many elastic IPs will be created? 2 elastic IPs. 2 elastic IPs. And can I also say how many NAT instances I need? Can I say something like this? 2 NAT instances. 2 NAT instances. And I need to specify under which subnet. Under which subnet? Under which subnet I need that NAT instance. When I create a NAT instance, I need to define the subnet ID. Can I refer private subnet IDs here? Something like this. Element of AWS dot AWS underscore subnet dot private subnets. That private subnets. This local name. AWS subnet dot AWS subnet AWS underscore subnet dot whatever I have given private subnets. Again star dot ID. Here, sorry, this has to be created in a public subnets. Okay. AWS, this NAT gateways has to be created in a public subnet. Can I say each in each public subnet in those, can I create a NAT gateway, something like this, count dot index. Now in 1A availability zone public subnet, one NAT instance. In 1B availability zone public subnet, one NAT instance. Are you trying to understand what we are doing here? There will be 2 NAT gateways. One NAT gateway will be created in the public subnet of 1A availability zone, in the public subnet of 1B availability zone. How many public subnets will be created here? Here, this is also fine because number of private subnets, right? I am depending on the public subnets also. I am depending on the public subnet because I am creating NAT instances in a public subnet. So how many public subnets I have? In those public subnets, I am creating a NAT instance. Here I can refer public subnet CIDR also. I can refer public subnet CIDR also like this. Like based on the number of public subnet CIDRs, I can create something like this. Or that can be, it has to be equal. It has to be equal also like this. Now what else we need to do while creating a association? You can give a tags, right? You can give a tags, that allocation id, you need to give. That allocation id is nothing but your elastic ip id, allocation id. And that allocation id also I can refer as a element, element aws eip nat ips, like that. So based on the number of public subnets you have, in each public subnet there will be one NAT gateway. There will be a NAT gateway. Now, if I want to assign the tags, right? If you want to assign the tags, you can again merge. You can use merge function, common tags, variable dot common tags, and on top of that you can add your own tags also, something like this. Demo VPC, NAT. You can use some dynamic values also. Something like this. You can use. Now we created something like this. Now what else is missing? Elastic IPs is also created. NAT gateways also created. What is missing now? Routing. So route table. I'll create a route table. I'll create a route table for private subnets. I'll create a route table, AWS route table, private route, private something. Let me give unique private routes, or whatever, private route table. Now here private route table, and again here I need to create a number of route tables based on the number of private subnets also. Here also what I can do, I can use a count. Count based on the length of the private subnets, CIDR, where dot private subnet CIDRs. And here also, instead of hard coding, can I get the element using element function? We created multiple resources, right? Element function, this NAT gateways. One second. This is not internet gateway. This is NAT gateway. One second. Let me copy paste. I don't want to waste much time. So this should be NAT gateway association, not public. So I am doing something like this. Private route table, demo VPC, private route table. Demo VPC private route table, something like this. Under which VPC you want to create this route table, something like this. And how many where dot based on the number of private subnets. Now element of VPC NAT gateways, something like this. So how many route tables will be created because of this? Two route table. In each route table, will it have a different NAT association? Say, because we are creating two NAT gateways again. In each route table, they have a different NAT gateway associated for that route because of this element again. Yes. And the last one is association. Route table association. I can do something like this again. Count. This route table association also based on the count. So NAT association. based on the number of subnets, that based on the number of subnets like this, 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 and you have created a subnets also here, whatever local name you used for creating a private subnet, right? Demo VPC private subnets, demo VPC private subnets, and route table, this route table, demo VPC route table. Now if you see, this is perfect. This is perfect now. Now I can merge that. I can use this merge function also for common tags. I can use merge function also for merging the common tags with your own tag also. You can use merge function like this. Merge function like this for route tables, for NAT gateways, for elastic IPs, right? For public route table also you can use, for public route table also you can use something like this. For VPC also you can use that merge. For VPC also you can use merge function tags, merge common tags, var dot common tags, comma your own tags for that VPC name, name demo VPC. Now let me validate. Let me do all these things. Terraform format or Terraform validate. Terraform validate for validating whether my script is proper or not. Now there is some mistake that is common, because in line number 82 I have R 2 times. Line number 82 I have R 2 times, resource. Now let me validate. Now if you see, my code is still having some problems. Where I have my code problem, line number 55, line number 82, still there is a problem. 82 also R 2 times is there. 82 also R 2 times it is there. So Terraform validate, Terraform validate, Terraform validate. Now here there is some function, there is one issue. Line number 55, line number 55. So here route table, public route, single route is also fine. Single route is also fine, but first of all I have not this single route also fine. For public route table, single route is also fine. I don't want to use any count here. I don't want to use any count here. For public subnet, single route table is fine. So I'm not going to create a multiple route table. Single route table is fine for public route. Now let me do the Terraform validate. Everything is perfect. Now let me show Terraform apply or Terraform plan or Terraform apply auto approve. Now, as per my requirement, VPC is created with the default values. Now, can I use same code if I want to create a VPC with multiple subnets with a different CIDR in a different availability zones in a different region also by passing variables? So I can have a dev variable file, prod variable file, QA variable file. By using that respective variable files, can I create a dev VPC with a different CIDRs, different subnets, CIDRs, and a prod VPC with a different prod CIDRs, QA VPC with a different CIDRs by reusing the same code by passing a different values? Yes. So I'll show that. As of now, I have demonstrated with single values file. As of now, I have demonstrated with default values file. Same code we will use tomorrow. I'll create a variable file. Can I assign different variables, and can I use that variable file for dev environment? Same code, different values. Production environment, same code, different values, like that. Yes, I'll continue that tomorrow. But is everyone clear what is list? List type, and a list type with all the advanced use cases. We used length function, we used element function, like that, with the list also. Very advanced use cases. This is how you see Terraform code. This is how Terraform code will be there. But are you guys able to understand now what is what? What do you mean by element here? What do you mean by length here? What do you mean by this here? How this is being passed? If you are already working on Terraform, you can understand your Terraform code easily. Any confusion, any doubts before I wrap up the session? If you see, now VPC is created. VPC is created as per my requirement. The VPC, this is the demo VPC. And if you see the tags, common tags is there. Common tags, these two common tags, and this is specific tag. And that VPC has 4 subnets. That VPC has 4 subnets. That VPC has 4 subnets. You can see that VPC 4 subnets. Because since index is starting from 0, you can, that doesn't make sense, right? So if you want to make something like this, public subnet 1, public subnet 2, that +1 is used, but I have not used that +1. You can see here subnet 0, subnet 1, like that. Since index is going to be start with 0, just for tags I am saying index +1. So here it will be shown as 1, it will be shown as 2. That's it. Here you observe, right? But I have removed that one. Here you can do something like this, right? The subnets +1, the tags at the tag level, because it is starting from 0, you won't find looks 0 like that. So if you say the tag demo VPC nat, if it is first time, 0 + 1 becomes 1. For the second time, 1 + 1 becomes 2, something like this. So this is just a plus arithmetic operator. Arithmetic operator. Arithmetic operator. That's it. Suppose here also you don't find that looks 0, 1, 0 and 1 doesn't make sense for you. So because you don't understand public subnet 0, so what is that 0? So because index start from 0, you are just adding a tag like this. 0 + 1 becomes 1. 1 + 1 becomes 2, like that. So if I let me apply, as of now you see like this. As of now you see like this. Let me make the code change. I've done the code change like this, and let me apply again. Now the tags will be updated. Only the tags will be updated because I have modified. You can see something like this. You can see something like this. The tags is updated. Only the tags are going to be updated. Now let me refresh. Let me refresh. Now you can see this makes some sense, right? Because 0 doesn't make any sense. Public subnet 0, what is that 0, like that? So public subnet 1, public subnet 2. So 0 + 1 for the first time, second time 1 + 1, like that. Clear? This is just an arithmetic operator. That's it. Now you can see there are 4 subnets. 4 subnets. In 1A availability zone, 2 subnet. In a 1B availability zones, 2 subnets. And there is a route table. Only one public route table. Only one public route table for that VPC. Only one public route table for that VPC. One public route table. One public route table where these, there is a IGW route and there is a subnets, these 2 subnets associated. But I created 2 private route table. One private route table in one availability zone. There is a route to this NAT instance, and this subnet is associated. This subnet is associated. In another route table, another NAT instance is associated. Other route table is associated. There are 2 NAT gateways. There are 2 NAT gateways. One NAT gateway in this subnet, another NAT gateway in another subnet. So is everyone clear what is being discussed today? In last classes, we were discussing simple use cases. Today, we started with very complex use case with all the advanced concepts in Terraform. Variables, functions we used. So I'll share this code with you, right? Try to understand this code. I'll continue from here tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll discuss about map. Today also we discussed about map. Today also we discussed about map of key value pairs. I will explain some other use cases with map also tomorrow. Thank you guys. That's it for today. I'll share this code with you guys today. Try to run and try to practice. I'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.